The HiLow small basic recipe for teachers. So as with the other recipes, we're going to import the recipe and then we're going to start on the first line that we can see. So can you read line 9 for me?
Play a bell.
Now if the kids can't think of what object, you're asking them to do control space and then arrow up and down, and hopefully they'll come across the sound item. And once they see the sound object, then they can go over here, and you're going to want to do the play, bell ring, and wait. So we're going to do sound, and we're going to do play, bell ring, and wait, so they can actually hear it in the program. And obviously you have to have the sound turned on so they can hear it. And then we're going to go ahead and run that. Yay, that's always a fun way to start. And we'll take that off. So now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to tell the user that they've won the game. And again, we're using a new item here. We had introduced this within the square recipe, but the kids may or may not know. It's the message box. And we're going to give them a message. So we're going to use this show message method. And again, let the kids read the documentation. You notice we put a fun thing over here, girl programmer's rule. Sometimes the kids will notice that. What we're trying to do is get them to put the quotes around the string. So you say, you won. Now, and at this point, obviously you don't have a game, but you will be able to see this. So remember, we're using the process of translate one line of code into one line of English. Now in this case, if you read the line, go ahead and read the line.
Tell the user that they won the game and exit.
And this actually takes 2 lines of code. So we're going to use which object here?
Program.
And on the program, we're going to see that we have the end method. So it's a little bit tricky. It's a little bit of a variant of a recipe, and we did this on purpose just to show kids that sometimes one line of English translates into 2 lines of code. So now we're going to run it, and there we go. There's our message, and then it exits out. So that's cool. So we're going to get rid of this. Now, the next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to ask the user for a guess. So we're going to say message box, and then we're going to say ask for input. We're going to say, what is your guess? And then we're going to run this, and we're going to just put any old guess in there. It's still not a working game, but they can see that every guess wins at this point. Now we're going to leave this line here because we haven't fully translated. Now the next line that we want to go to is we want to go to this line 7. So this line 7, if we read it out, go ahead and read it.
If the guess is correct.
Okay, we want to play the bell and say that you won. So this is a little bit tricky. On this if, we're going to do it as an if with an else if and an end if. You can do it with separate ifs or however is comfortable for you. We do have the teaching slide with the else if, and this is the first time we're introducing the complex if. So we're gonna do it the way that we originally wrote it here. So we're gonna say if guess equals, and we're gonna fake it till we make it because we really don't know what the answer is right now. So we're just gonna put in 50. And this is a technique that we talked about in the previous Pentagon Crazy recipe, and we've done in some of the other recipes. You're just putting in a value so you can test it. Then you want to play all this stuff, and you want to end the program. Now, at what line are you going to put the end if, do you think? Go ahead, what line do you think?
21.
You're going to put it at 21. That's a good point. And the kids are going to mess up on this, so if they don't have an end if, then you're going to want to correct that. So we're going to go ahead and run that. And it's going to say, hey, we've got this variable guess. It's used, but it's not assigned. So we actually have to make a change to the code in line 6 because we're using this guess, but we're not assigning it. So what we want to do is rather than setting the guess equal to 50, we're going to go ahead and say that the guess is equal to the value that's in the message box. Now this won't do anything. Because we have to put this back and say what that value is. So let's go ahead and run that. And we say 50. And you can see that we won the game. So that's cool. So there were a couple things we had to do there. We had to put in a value for the guess, which is actually not faking the guess, it's faking the answer. We had to assign the value of the message box to this variable guess. So again, you can use the variable slide there. So let's go ahead and clean up this line of code, and let's use our formatting so it's easier to see what's going on here. and we've asked the user for a guess, so we'll clean up that. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to this section of the guess being too high. And go ahead and read that line 10.
Otherwise, if the guess is too high.
And we decided we were going to use what there?
Else if.
An else if. So we want to pull up the else if. And then there is an example that's really important when you are introducing this along with the slide. So we're going to say guess is greater than 50 at this point. We're going to say then we're going to use a message box. So we got two lines that we're translating here. And we're going to say show message. We're going to say too high. Okay. And then I think that should go. Let's see if we have any syntax errors. Okay, so we're going to say 51, and then it's going to say too high. Okay, so that's good. So now we've done that. So guess is too high, but we're going to leave that here for just a minute. We're going to take this off, and you'll see why in just a minute. The next two lines that we're going to translate is kind of the same thing. Otherwise, if the guess is too low. So in this case, what syntax are we going to use? Not if, not else if, but
else.
We're just going to use an else. That's in any other condition, and we don't have to put, the guess, because basically either the guess is equal to a value or it's greater than. In any other case, it would be less than. And then we're going to use the same pattern with the message box dot show message, and we're going to say too low. And now let's test this out, and it should be anything below 50, of course. And so we're going to say 49 and test this out, and it's too low. Okay, so that's all good. So now we're going to say this line is cleaned up and this line is cleaned up. And again, use your formatting very judiciously so the kids can see what's going on. Okay, now the next thing that we need to do is we need to set a number of times it can actually guess. So we're going to do that by translating line 3. Go ahead and read line 3.
Do the following 8 times.
And hopefully by this recipe, if you've been teaching the recipe sequentially, the kids will be very easily be able to translate the do the following X number of times into a for loop. But again, if they're stuck, do a control space and have them just arrow through to find the for keyword. And working in pairs, they should be able to get this. For I equals 1, 2, 8. And then, of course, they have to end the for loop. Now, where are we going to end the for loop?
After the end if.
After the end if, and this is a very common mistake that kids make. They put the end for before the end if, which the loop then isn't executed correctly. So we're going to go ahead and we're actually going to set this. This is something you can do for classroom to 3 times just to make it a little easier to test. And so we're going to say, and we can't actually test the result because what's going to happen is if they don't win the game after 3 times, we have to complete the translation down here. So if after, in our case, 3 times they haven't guessed correctly, then tell them they lost the game. So we're going to translate that by saying message box, show message, you lost, sorry. So in this case, we're just to facilitate the screencast, we're going to do a quicker test. And we're going to go ahead and run that. And we're going to say 49, and that should be too low, right? And that's too low. And we're going to say 51, and that should be too high. And then we're going to say 100, and that should be too high as well. And then it said, say you lost, which it does. So now we can take out some of this stuff. We can set this back to 8 to make it like a real game in line 4, and we can get rid of this. And we can go ahead and take out line 17. We don't need that. Line 18, we don't need that. And then we can do a format again. But we're still not in the case of a real game because we have a fixed value for the answer. And this is a tricky concept for the kids to get, but again, we're reinforcing the idea of variables. So what we're going to do is we're going to start working on, we can take this out too, we're going to start working on line 1. And there's going to be a fake it if you make it kind of thing going on. So read out line 1.
Choose a random number between 1 and 100.
Okay, now it's not immediately obvious when you read this, but what we're doing is this is the answer to the game. So sometimes kids need help with this. You want them to create a variable called answer, and you can set that to the 50 as a fake it till you make it. And I'd really recommend that you teach it this way because it helps the kids. We're not translating the random number value yet. We're just setting a value of the answer. Now what you want to do is you want to find, just like we did when we did the variations of the square, where 50 occurs. So you can see in line 5, if guess equals 50 should be guess equals answer. And then in line 10, if guess equals 50 should be guess equals answer, because you're putting a variable in where you had a static value. And now you can get rid of this line, of course, too. And now we should have the same results, and we can go ahead and run it. I'm actually going to set this to 3 just for the purposes of demonstration. And we're going to say, okay, 49, that should be too low, and it is, and 51. So we got the same thing, and 57, and it's too high, and no, we lost. Okay, now to complete the game, we have to do a couple things. We have to change this to 8 so it's more fun to play, and then we have to fill this out. The kids may not be familiar with the math object, so you might have to tell them, math object, then explore it, and what we're looking for is a random number. So we're going to hopefully get them to get random number, and that takes the argument of between 1 and a certain number. So the English is 1 in 100, so let's put in 100, and then we'll go ahead and run it. And now we have 8 times to try it, so let's see if we can do it. Let's start with 50. That makes more sense, huh? Say 50, and that is too low. So we're going to say 80, and we'll see if we can win the game. That's too low. And we're going to say 90, and too high. It looks like we might have a chance to win. And 85. We won! So that is exciting. Their number was 85. So once we clean this up, and then that is our recipe. You're going to go ahead and save it. Some variations that we'll be recording on this is you can set in values that can be for guesses. You can do different types of validations in terms of what is the range of possible guesses. And you can do different types of validations if you don't put those in. And it really helps kids to understand how message boxes return information to users. So again, like the other recipes, we do have a quiz for this. When they finish the recipe, do the recap, do the variation, and have them try out the quiz. Hope this helped. Thanks for listening.